Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Sayyidina Uqba bin Amir radiyallahu anhu. He asks the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He asked him, "What is salvation?" So, the question is, how do I gain salvation? How do I become successful? How do I save myself from the punishments of the next life and so on? And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives him three pieces of advice. And these three pieces of advice are quite important for us in this day and age, because if you look around, you won't see many people acting upon all of these three. So the first advice he gives is amsik alayka lisanak. He says for salvation, you need to control your tongue. The actual hadith is hold on to your tongue instead of control. Okay, fine, you can control it, but this actually says hold on to your tongue, which would mean that you want to say something, but you just don't say it. Why shouldn't you say something you want to say? Because you want to weigh it in your mind. What are the consequences of what I'm going to say? Whether it's to a close family member, whether it's to a friend, or whether it's these days it's so easy to text or to send a message on your phone, and it would be the same thing of holding your tongue back, meaning holding your hand back in trying to give a message, because sometimes you try and say a lot, and when you say a lot, you get into trouble, or you make trouble for yourself, or you invite trouble, or you just make your life a bit more difficult because you said the wrong thing at the wrong time, or you said too much, or you gave somebody too much hope for something, or you caused maybe some fear, or you said something with your tongue that made someone feel awkward or insulted at a certain time. So all these things will come under holding one's tongue. Sometimes you're in a political situation within your own remits of your life. You need to understand that sometimes it's better not to speak than to speak. Seriously, so things sometimes get better when you do speak, and sometimes it gets worse when you speak. So you decide which one of these two is going to be true for me, because you should take the lesser of the two evils. Okay, lesser of the two evils. Now, the second part of his advice is وَلْيَسَعْكَ بَيْتُكَ. Let your house be wide enough for you. I know the translation here is let your house be sufficient for you, but the actual word here used is yasa', which means that it's large enough for you. So allow your house to be large enough for you, meaning that stay home. The simple advice is stay home. If you want salvation, the next thing is you stay home. Why? Because when sometimes there's more trouble that you can brew by going outside than to stay indoors. And of course we need to go outdoors. It's not saying that we shouldn't go outdoors, but it's just to say that when you've got a situation where you might get into sin, or you might get swayed into people's problems, or you've got something going out there where people will take you towards a sinful situation, then it's better to stay home. And staying home means not to doss around outside, not to roam around the streets, being out late night and so on. Staying home means just find yourself comfort in your own house. Comfort in your own house, whichever way you find it. And then the final advice that the Prophet ﷺ he gives is wabki ala khati'atik. Cry over your sins. Meaning that everyone has sins, so hold your tongue back, stay home, cry over your sins. Meaning that create a situation where you're always connected with Allah Azza wa Jal. Because if you're crying for your sins, you've got fear of Allah. Nobody would cry for their sins. No one's going to cry for their sins if they've got no fear of Allah. So what this is telling us is to create that fear of Allah, to cry over what we've done wrong, because that's going to give you salvation. Think about it. You cry over your sins, and that crying will extinguish for you the fire of hell. You can use the 7 oceans to try and extinguish the fire of hell. You won't get anywhere. But a few tears, even one teardrop, can extinguish the fire of hell. So that's to extinguish the fire of hell. This one in the middle here, to stay in your house, is to give you salvation from what's around you in your society, in the outer world. And this one is more or less to give you salvation with the people that you come in contact with, perhaps even your own family members. Because sometimes you say too much, perhaps with your own friends. Sometimes you say too much and you've made yourself, you put yourself in a worse situation, than what you were in. So 3 pieces of advice. May Allah Azza wa Jalla give us tawfiq to act upon this. Jazakumullah khair. And by the way, the hadith itself is in Abu Dawood 4343 and Tirmidhi 2406, and it's with a good chain. Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.